What would you do if you showed up for a family reunion you paid for and no one came? No calls, no texts, just silence and a laugh that changed everything. Welcome to a place where family love isn't always what it seems, where loyalty is tested, and where betrayal often hides behind smiles. Here, every story begins with trust and unravels into truth. You'll hear about manipulation disguised as care, favoritism masked as tradition, and marriages shaken by secrets that were never meant to surface. These are stories of humiliation that turn into awakening, moments where silence becomes strength, and revenge doesn't explode, it exposes. No screaming, no begging, just clarity, consequences, and the quiet collapse of false bonds. If you've ever felt underestimated, betrayed, or controlled by the people closest to you, you're not alone. You're exactly where you need to be.
The reunion was presented as an act of love, wrapped in speeches about togetherness and healing old wounds. Every detail was planned with care, paid for without hesitation, because family was supposed to mean safety. Trust came easily when it was spoken in familiar voices, when unity was preached with warm smiles and gentle promises. No one questioned the invitation. No one imagined it was a setup. The silence at the venue revealed the truth faster than words ever could. Empty chairs lined the walls like witnesses, decorations hung untouched, mocking the effort behind them. Phones stayed quiet, not because of an accident, but because the plan had worked perfectly. This wasn't forgetfulness, it was deliberate exclusion disguised as affection. Later, the truth surfaced through fragments, screenshots, half-deleted messages, careless laughter overheard at the wrong moments. Family members had agreed not to show up, turning the reunion into a lesson in control. They spoke of loyalty while orchestrating humiliation. They called it harmless. They called it tradition. What they really wanted was obedience. The most painful betrayal didn't come from blood alone. The husband knew. Worse, the husband helped. Private conversations revealed jokes made at the expense of commitment, complaints shared freely with people who never respected the marriage. While pretending to be supportive, he fed information to those who resented independence. He reassured them that nothing would change, that loyalty belonged elsewhere. Every ignored boundary from the past suddenly made sense. Every argument that ended with dismissal, every time concerns were minimized and labeled as overreactions. The reunion wasn't the beginning of betrayal, it was the proof of how long it had been happening. Anger arrived quietly, replacing shock with clarity. Love that requires silence isn't love. Family that laughs at pain isn't family. A husband who collaborates with cruelty isn't a partner. Trust had been weaponized, turned into a trap meant to keep control firmly in their hands. That empty room became a turning point. No confrontation was needed in that moment. The truth spoke louder than any scream ever could. Some betrayals don't break a person, they expose everyone else. The laugh came through the phone, sharp and careless, the kind that didn't try to hide its cruelty. It wasn't nervous or surprised, it was practiced. That single sound stripped away years of carefully performed affection and exposed what had always lived underneath. Questions about the empty reunion hall were met with amusement, as if humiliation were entertainment. Unity had been preached for years, yet disrespect came so easily. That laugh carried history with it. It echoed with childhood comparisons, unspoken rankings, and constant reminders of who mattered most. Favoritism had always been disguised as guidance. Manipulation had worn the mask of concern. Every boundary pushed aside was justified as love. Hearing that laugh made it clear none of it had been accidental. Words followed, light and dismissive, said it wasn't a big deal,
said people changed their minds, said expectations were the real problem. Each sentence landed like proof, not excuses. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a game designed to reinforce control, to remind who held power and who was expected to accept whatever was given. What hurt more than the mockery was what came next. Messages surfaced later, quiet evidence of conversations that were never meant to be seen. The husband had known about the plan. Worse, the husband had reassured everyone it would be fine. Jokes were exchanged about reactions. Concerns were brushed off as predictable drama. Loyalty was pledged, just not where it belonged. Years of silence suddenly made sense. The way concerns were dismissed after family visits, the way arguments always ended with suggestions to let it go. The husband hadn't been neutral. Silence had been a choice, and that choice protected the people who laughed. The realization didn't arrive with tears. It arrived with a strange calm. Love that requires humiliation isn't love. Guidance that depends on fear isn't guidance. A marriage that survives by pleasing others isn't a partnership. That laugh revealed more than cruelty. It revealed alliances, priorities, and truths that could no longer be ignored. No confrontation followed that night. No shouting matched the volume of that laugh. The damage had already been done, and clarity had already taken its place. Some laughs are unforgettable because they mark the exact moment everything finally became clear. The humiliation arrived quietly, dressed as silence. Standing alone in the rented venue, surrounded by untouched decorations and neatly arranged chairs, the truth settled in without needing explanation. Every step echoed too loudly, every detail confirming that this emptiness wasn't an accident, it was intentional. Pain pressed hard in that moment, not because of the absence of people, but because of the effort that had been so easily dismissed. Minutes stretched, then hours. Phones stayed still. Messages went unanswered. The realization hit slowly, then all at once. This wasn't forgetfulness or poor planning. It was a message, a reminder of position, of who was expected to give and who was free to take without consequence. Humiliation wasn't a side effect, it was the goal. Clarity followed pain like a shadow. The patterns that once felt confusing suddenly aligned. The constant compromises, the way decisions were always second-guessed after family conversations. The husband's silence during moments that demanded support. That silence now screamed louder than words. Later discoveries confirmed it. Messages exchanged in advance, reassurance given behind closed doors, promises made to others that nothing would change. The husband hadn't been surprised by the empty room. He had known. He had chosen comfort over honesty, loyalty to those who demanded control over commitment to a marriage. While standing alone in that hall, he was somewhere else, pretending ignorance, already rehearsing excuses. That betrayal cut deeper than the absence of family ever could. Humiliation shifted into something sharper. Power doesn't disappear, it moves. Emotional control, once held by those who orchestrated the scene, slipped away the moment the truth became undeniable. No one in that empty room held authority anymore. The manipulation lost its grip because it had finally been seen for what it was. There was no collapse, no public breakdown, just a quiet awakening. The understanding that love built on embarrassment isn't love, that respect demanded through silence isn't respect, and that a husband who participates in humiliation has already stepped outside the marriage. Walking out of that venue felt different than arriving. The pain was still there, but it no longer owned the moment. The trap had failed, not because it didn't hurt, but because it revealed too much. Humiliation was the last tool they had, and it no longer worked. Revenge didn't arrive in a storm of accusations or broken plates. It arrived quietly, carried by truth and patience. After the empty reunion hall and the mocking laughter, there was no confrontation, no desperate pleas for understanding. Silence became a tool, not a weakness. While others assumed the humiliation had worked, something else was happening beneath the surface. Every message was saved, every bank transfer traced. Conversations once hidden behind jokes and family loyalty were carefully preserved. Truth has a way of organizing itself when emotions step aside. The husband's role became impossible to ignore. He hadn't just stayed quiet, he had coordinated. Private threads showed warnings sent ahead of time, reassurances given that the plan would go smoothly. He promised them there would be no consequences, that forgiveness was guaranteed, that obedience was familiar. The most damaging secrets weren't dramatic affairs or explosive scandals. They were patterns. Financial decisions discussed without consent, personal struggles shared for entertainment, moments of vulnerability repackaged as gossip. The marriage had been used as a bridge for others to cross freely, while respect was never invited along. Revenge didn't require exposure on social media or public meltdowns. It unfolded through timing. A casual mention to the right person, documents shared when questions were finally asked, calm responses when lies began to collapse under their own weight. Family members who once laughed were suddenly defensive, scrambling to explain stories that no longer matched. The husband felt it last, the shift, the loss of control. When silence was no longer compliance, panic followed. Apologies arrived late and poorly rehearsed. Promises sounded hollow once loyalty had already been proven conditional. The same people who demanded understanding suddenly begged for privacy. False family bonds don't survive truth. They depend on secrecy, on one person absorbing discomfort so everyone else stays comfortable. Once that role ended, the structure cracked. Invitations stopped, messages slowed, distance grew naturally, without effort. There was no chaos because chaos would have given them something to point at. Instead, consequences did the work. Trust was withdrawn, access was limited. Emotional doors closed without announcement. The collapse wasn't loud, but it was permanent. Revenge didn't destroy anything real. It simply removed the lies holding everything together. If this story spoke to you, don't forget to like. It helps these truths reach more people. Subscribe for more real stories where lies are uncovered and power quietly shifts back where it belongs. Until next time, remember, truth doesn't need revenge. It becomes it.